Bilişim sahnesinin en son session'ına geçiyoruz. Open Insights CTO'su Faizan Chaudhary'den şirketlerin buluta nasıl yaklaştıklarını ve kucakladıklarını dinliyor olacağız. Hi Faizan.
Hey Alim.
Stage is yours. Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me. Just a brief introduction about myself. I'm Faizan Chaudhary, Chief Technology Officer at Open Insights. Worked in the telecommunications and the banking world for the last 20 years. Have been working with a wide variety of companies doing data migration from on-premise to cloud, which is why the guys at SmartCom wanted me to come in and talk about my personal experiences as far as cloud migration is concerned. I'm just going to display the deck. I'm hoping everyone can see the deck. I know I have about 10 minutes to finish up the session. The agenda I wanted to cover was a quick background on cloud computing, migrations, and some of the reasons why migrations fail from on-premise to cloud. The key considerations when you think about what cloud infrastructure should you go for. Some experiences that I've had along with a bunch of others within Open Insights on migration projects. And lastly, we'll talk about Open Insights as to what we do if we get the time. History of cloud computing. Now, cloud came into the world where people wanted to think about how do we build infrastructure on demand, effectively getting rid of the CapEx need from an infrastructure standpoint to an OpEx need, where the storage cost significantly came down by an order of 10x, and the compute power multiplied with that order too. The first people to invent or discover the cloud were obviously the IBM folks. It started way long back. AWS brought it to life in 2006. NASA started building a hybrid cloud in 2008, and everyone has started using it effectively. What has changed between the early 2000s and the world of today that we live in? Technology has evolved at a very rapid pace from a world where you used to code things manually to the world where everything is automated in the DevOps, DevSecOps world, right? From a world where you had to manually integrate a number of components. Everything comes in a prepackaged manner on the cloud, and we'll talk about the types of cloud in a bit. The issues that we used to think about whether cloud is secure in those times, to a very well-proven security architecture, which obviously a number of telcos and banks are starting to adopt. So that's a brief history. Now, quickly jumping on as to why do migration projects fail. And these are industry statistics, so you can Google search them and find out. 85% of the big data projects that embark on a cloud fail. There are a number of reasons that they fail because of, which we'll talk about in the coming slides. 62% of the companies said in a survey which Gartner conducted that they envisage the movement to the cloud to be much cheaper and much faster. Unfortunately, it didn't go down too well with a lot of those companies. Some examples where migrations have failed, and I think these are all examples that are on the internet. TSB Bank had a disastrous implementation where they were fined significantly by the FCA. Chase Bank invested over $100 million, which they had to write off. The Microsoft Hadoop alternative, Dryad, is a very well-known write-off in the world. So these are some of the projects that have failed implementations. Now, why do we say that these projects fail, or what do we think are the reasons that these projects fail? The top reason that we see is leadership misalignment. The issue is everyone believes that cloud needs to come in However, people don't have the right vision as to how do we go about implementing it. As an example, organizations don't focus on skills. They pick a cloud that they feel is appropriate. They pick an infrastructure. They pick products that may not suit their needs. So leadership misalignment is one of the big factors that we think makes material impact on cloud implementations. The next big factor that we think about is the vision at times is ambitious, where people want to move to the cloud in a big bang manner. They commit to that movement. However, they lack the execution for whatever reason. It could be skills, it could be budget, it could be security issues, it could be a wide variety of reasons as to why these projects fail. The third big reason that we believe is, given the advent of the open source world along with the cloud, a lot of people forget the importance of data governance. Without data governance, implementing anything on the cloud is a strict no, because the regulators will literally come after those companies or go after those companies. And I think they will eventually go down a path where regulatory requirements become so stringent that the failure of migration will be inevitable. Just a few points around how do we think about migration and what are the key principles to use to avoid the pitfalls that we spoke about. The first principle that Open Insights generally talks about is do migration in small chunks. Basically, iterate in an agile manner or iterate in a Kanban mode. Now, what that does is it de-risks the entire project program that was supposed to finish in 2 years. We talk about delivering every 16 weeks. Effectively take an MVP, finish off in 16 weeks. Only take the feature function that you can deliver in 16 weeks, plus the fact that those feature functions should eventually lead to some business benefit. So that's one of the most significant principles that Open Insights talks about. The second one, where we genuinely believe that data strategy and data governance play a significantly important role when you do this. When we talk about data strategy, we talk about having a proper roadmap, which will eventually build the cloud infrastructure, migrate all the data for you, et cetera, et cetera. We also talk about building it towards a set of regulatory requirements. So effectively, data strategy and data governance play a key role in some of these things. The third most important bit is skill resources. Now, a resource who has been brought up in the on-premise world knows a certain way of working. Cloud requires a significantly different thought process, which is one of the key requirements of migration. Jumping on, I'm sure everyone's aware of the types of cloud, private, public, hybrid, and a multi-cloud architecture that everyone's talking about at this point in time. Public cloud is generally created by the IT infrastructure team. It is not owned by that company. It's pretty much an outsourced feature function. It typically runs off-premise from the company. It can be in a multi-tenant architecture. Private cloud, solely dedicated to that particular company, can run on-premise, off-premise, both are possible. The reason people go down the private cloud route is because they want to run it on-premise. And this is dedicated to the user group that gets created for that particular company. Hybrid cloud, it's a combination of public and private. It can run on-premise or off-premise with the service provider. All the systems are managed effectively as a single environment. So change management becomes significantly easier these days with respect to hybrid cloud. A multi-cloud architecture. So there are three primary clouds, as everyone knows: AWS, Azure, and Google. And we'll talk about some of the implementations in a bit. A multi-cloud architecture is, there could be multiple vendors that could provide solutions for a particular problem. You could have a next best offer developed in a Google Cloud. You could have something else developed in Azure, and they actually work seamlessly. Some case studies from some of the experiences that we've had in the recent past. there was an implementation that I and some of my team were involved in Southeast Asia, where we were supposed to migrate data for approximately 6 million consumers in a telco giant in Southeast Asia. The business case was prepared by us. There were a number of requirements that we worked towards. We said we're going to move the data that is required for a particular use case. So in the telco world, we have something called as recontracting. Effectively, how many people are going to recontract when an Apple launches or a Samsung launches. That was the use case we took. We migrated data that is relevant to only that particular use case. We didn't go big bang saying we want to migrate everything onto the cloud. Generally, telcos prefer Azure, and I don't know why do they prefer Azure. A lot of banks prefer Google. AWS is perceived as a competitor by retailers, so AWS generally doesn't get used in retail, but insurance companies, banks, there's a big fight between Google and AWS in that sense. Coming back to the case study, we did the migration in a record time of about 16 weeks. There were over 1,400 attributes migrated across 6 million consumers in 16 weeks time, right? It was done using Azure, as I said. We used a number of components of Azure. We used a number of components from the open source world, which helped us move faster. This was the approach that we followed. In phase one, we said we're going to reuse the existing on-premise solution. We will start scaling down the on-premise solution and vertically scale up the cloud solution. Eventually, the data collection hub was sitting within the customer's premise, and most of the feature function from a machine learning AI perspective moved onto the cloud. This is another example of a strategic data platform build, which was done in 12 weeks at a retailer. The rationale behind using the cloud was they were on a IBM Netezza infrastructure, which was legacy. It used to fall down literally every day because it used to run in a batch mode. We took about 12 weeks, right from the inception of the design to the finish of the project. It took us 12 weeks. The use case that we did over here was analytics on a particular segment of customers. This is another big retailer in the US, where we actually brought in a cloud solution. The use case that we were given at this point in time, or for this particular retailer, was to launch the platform, bring in all the data that they had. So this was a slightly different project where we brought the retailer's complete data in a record time of 6 months. There were 4 use cases that we deployed. Normally, if you go down a path where you bring in data in a big bang manner, it takes about 2 years, or this project would have taken about 2 years. We finished this project in 6 months by doing iterative delivery every 4 weeks. Quickly, just about Open Insights. As I said, I work in Open Insights. It's a big data analytics company. There are some big projects that we do from a migration standpoint. We also have our data governance arm. We're based out of Pune in India, Amman in Jordan. We have a few people in Turkey as well, predominantly a setup that is driven from India. So that's it from my side. I would like to open it up for questions.
I guess there are no questions on the call. Faizan, thank you very much for this presentation. It was very informative. And thank you very much for sharing your view to the cloud world. Güzel sunum için Faizan'a çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Ve Bulut Bilişim sahnesini burada sonlandırıyoruz. Tüm konuşmacılara, sponsorlara ve izleyicilere çok teşekkürler. Ben kişisel olarak çok keyif aldım ve faydalandım. Umarım tüm izleyenler için de aynı şekilde keyifli ve bilgilendirici olmuştur. Hoşça kalın diyerek burada sonlandırıyoruz.